Hey, welcome to X-Oriente, the new voice of brotherhood. I am half your host, Eric Diamond.
I'm your other half host, Jason Van Dyke. Hi, everybody.
Hey, um, so um, so we didn't do a show last week. I was in Old Blighty, as they say. I had to go to
And I
London.
was too lazy to do it myself. Sorry.
um, and yeah, but we're back, and today we're going to talk a little bit about winners and losers in Masonry. And this sort of started out as sort of an idea, Jason, that you were kind of kicking around.
It did. And I can read this if you want me to. I think
Sure.
let's try that. So essentially, uh, at work, what I'll do is, for ideas for my magazine or for the blog, um, kind of keep a folder of ideas, things that are percolating. And when Eric and I end up trying to come up with ideas for a show, sometimes I will dig deep into the folder of ideas. And and the ideas that I have in there are in various stages of work. Some are just outlines, some are a couple pages long, some are almost finished and just need polish. This one was actually just two paragraphs that I wrote, and then for some reason had to move on to something else and just sort of stayed there. But they've been there for a really long time, and so I wasn't quite sure where I was going with this. But here's let me read this to you. Here's what I had written, entitled "The Winners and Losers in Freemasonry." Freemasonry is a relatively egalitarian organization. We meet on the level as equals, regardless of outside social or economic standing. We elect our leaders in open elections, and we discard religious and political divisions in search of harmony and universal truth. But like everywhere else, there are winners and losers in Freemasonry. And that's not a bad thing, because both teach us excellent moral lessons that we can apply in our lives. Today, there is much consternation about this topic, especially when it comes to our children. Should a child be encouraged to keep trying no matter the results, or should children be taught that the world is a harsh place at a young age and their mistakes will form protective calluses from future harm? Each path has its truth, but which path is capital T true? So those are the two paragraphs I wrote. And then I read this to Eric and I went, I have no idea where I was going with that. Like I stopped writing at the nut graph, basically, where I was going to get to the point. It was right there, and I just let it go. So Eric and I talked about it a little bit, and we may have figured out where I was going with it. We'll find out tonight, that's for sure. But hopefully, you guys out there can help us find some answers in this, and maybe find a direction with it. So Eric just liked it because it had a catchy title.
Right, because that's it's all I'm about. I'm just Mr. Marketing, you know.
Right, right, exactly.
Um,
So
no, there was a lot. There was a lot in there to unpack. You know, like I felt like so for example, you say our children, right?
sure,
You say that should a child be encouraged to keep trying no matter the result, right?
right.
So
Hmm.
let's start by like saying like what do we mean that there are winners and losers in Freemasonry? Who wins, who loses in your mind?
It's a great question. Here's the thing, right? Is I'm not quite sure why I named it that. I think I was thinking about elections at the time that I wrote this.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe that's what I was referring to, is that, winning and losing an election on either side, winning it and losing it, it's not the end of the world, you know? And and so for sure, winners and losers. The winners are people who get elected. The losers, the people who don't.
So the
Winners.
only
Well, let's wait.
yeah
Let's keep
okay
going. Let's
yeah
keep
yeah
going. Let's just
yeah
make a list.
okay
Winner, guy who gets elected to lodge. Loser, guy that gets blackballed. Um, well, let's see. Winners and losers in lodge. Uh, Winner, the master of the lodge. Loser, guy who's got an idea contrary to the master of the lodge. What else? Trying to come up with some. Come on, Eric, you can help me now. Winners and losers. Winner in lodge, the guy that goes to lodge. Loser, the guy that only shows up once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
Winner, the guy that gives a presentation in lodge. Loser, the guy who doesn't. Think about that. That's a perception one. The perception is that if I give a presentation in lodge, I really get lots out of masonry, and I'm showing everyone how much I'm getting out of it. But the guy who isn't comfortable standing up in front of people and talking or whatever, and just is content to listen, and has probably done lots of reading by himself and done those things, is looked down upon because he, sure, you might have read and stuff, but why are you up there telling us all about it?
So I have like a kind of a different perception of that, right? So
sure, okay, go ahead.
So when I think about winners and losers, right? So like for me,
Mm-hmm.
like winners are past masters, right?
Well,
right?
that's a fact, actually. Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
If you're a past master, you've pretty much you've done the whole line. You've dealt with all the crazy stuff. Mm-hmm. And now you're kind of this elder statesman of the lodge, right? And you get to have an opinion about everything, and you get to express it, right? Maybe not in open lodge, but you get to express it, and you don't really have a whole lot of the responsibility of, what that entails, right? You don't. So to me, that's past masters are big winners, and that extends to the Grand Lodge level too. Like a past Grand Master, right? I mean, he can basically say what he wants, do what he wants, right? I mean, aside, unless you're in certain jurisdictions where that becomes,
then you can really do whatever you want.
Yeah, then it becomes
there are no consequences.
Yikes. Yeah, but to me, I think that the idea of winners and losers in Masonry, I think people perceive that, but I think it's kind of insidious. Like I don't think that it's right or true, right? So I would say that the idea of winning something, right, is you set yourself some kind of a task, right,
mm-hmm.
and then you succeed at that task, and that to me it constitutes a win, right? You set a goal and you achieve that goal. So you might set a goal: I want to be master of the lodge, and if you meet that goal, you've won, and if you fail at that goal, you've lost, right? If you set a goal to become a Mason, and you become a Mason, you've won, right? And if you don't, you've not, you've lost. You've not achieved that. And so I think what happens is we get kind of caught up in this idea of winning and losing, right? And then mm-hmm. there's this thing. So, one of the things my wife is currently into this a lot. She does a lot of reading on this now. Is sort of like the psychology of happiness, right? And so there's this sort of thing that we do where we compare ourselves to others. And I know that as a young Mason, I did this a lot, right? So I remember going to to the Scottish Rite Cathedral as a newly minted Scottish Rite Mason, and seeing all mm-hmm. these guys in white hats with jewels on, swaggering around like they own the place, and asking people what's that, and they said, oh, that's a those are the 33rds, I'm like, well, what's that? And they said, well, those are people who've given, who've gone over and above, to the fraternity as a whole, or to humanity. And I thought, oh, these guys must be real, and immediately I started comparing myself to them. Oh, could I ever be like that? Mm-hmm. And what I found out later is that, it depends. Like some of those guys really deserved it. Other guys were just, it was sort of a reward for sticking with it and playing the
Right.
game for, however many years they played. So it really, like there wasn't a whole lot of like the bestowal of that honor didn't really necessarily mean what we think it means. It's kind of like somebody who gets a knighthood, like good people get knighthoods, bad people get knighthoods, like,
Sure.
George Ryan, who was the governor of Illinois, who went to prison for the rest of his life, was a 33rd degree Mason, right? So it doesn't really,
Very true.
but immediately for me, like, immediately what I found is that, like, I started comparing myself to them and being like, oh, well, am I that type of material? And, look at this person, they got this honor at this age, and I'm older than that. And maybe I'm not doing what I should be doing, so I think in that respect, this idea of winners and losers is kind of insidious.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So let's, I want to kind of piggyback on that a little bit, because since then I've kind of thought about this a little bit more. And one of the thoughts that I just wrote down was, men are really competitive by nature. We seek dominance. It's just kind of in our DNA. It's what
Mm-hmm.
men do. And so throw a whole bunch of men into a room that's just men. So we don't have to worry about, being nice in front of the lady folk to impress them with our sensitivity and whatnot. And watch us go and try and rip each other apart. And what's interesting about Freemasonry is that it does do that. It throws a bunch of men into a room by themselves, um, and it teaches equality. But at the same time, it has mechanisms for stratification, right? So what is going on? All these, again, when we've talked about this before, the mixed messages of Freemasonry, and this is one of those mixed messages. This is a do as I say, not as I do kind of a thing, because it says, like, oh, we all meet on the level, except for the guy in the front, and then the officers, they're more important. So here, all right, except for the guy in the front, the officers on the side, and then the Grand Lodge. But that's it. Other than those people, we all are level. And
What did the
it's
Romans
pretty
ever
funny,
do
right?
for us?
That's right. Besides the roads, the bridges, and the aqueducts, and the security and safety. Uh, so
And the wine.
so here, right, and the wine. But aside from that, nothing. Here's what I wrote down as the important lessons, I think, when it kind of comes to this stuff, and that's that there are winners and losers. There's defeat and there's victory, and you cannot get away from that. It is a fact of life, if there ever was one. Another fact of life is death. Winners, losers, and death. That's going to happen. Um, so I thought that it's really important to understand grace in defeat and in victory. You don't lord over people when you win, um, and you don't hold sour grapes when you lose. It is important that, again, we talk about the equality. The equality isn't so much, hey, we're all equal, nobody's better than each other. It's more about, yes, we're going to be moving, but the rising tide lifts all ships. And so, whether your idea wins or not, let's all keep it together. Um, and so that's grace in defeat and in victory.
So
Both.
that kind of begs a question, right? Which is sort of
Sure. Go ahead.
the nature. So when we say we're all equal, we're all on the level, what does that mean? Right. And I think what that means is that we start from the same place,
Yeah.
right? We all
Absolutely.
start, like, nobody starts higher than somebody else. And if they do, then that's wrong. That's not meeting on the
Yeah.
level.
Right. It means that we all start at the same place, but it also means that the guy who's furthest up is bringing people with him, and so that we're always striving to keep each other at level. But as people move up, we're pulling everybody up. That's what it means to me.
Yeah. No,
Um,
I would agree with that. And I think that as an organization, too often we don't do that. Like, we don't, in other words, we've missed out on, and I sort of, like, I don't know, like, part of me, like, in my perception of things, and I freely admit that I could have faulty perceptions of this. I kind of blame the appendant bodies for this, right? Because the appendant bodies created a whole host of titles,
Right.
invitationals,
Yep.
honors, bling. I mean, and these are all ways to distinguish one person's achievement from another, right? And
Yeah.
I always like, keep in my head, um, guys like, Brent, Morris
Hmm.
and Art de Hoyos, you know, who pretty much those guys have had their dance ticket punched, right?
Oh yeah.
Whatever one can get in masonry, these guys got it, and probably several times over. But
Yeah.
they don't they don't act like that. They don't lord it over people. They don't,
No.
they're very gracious about how it's like they have, yes, they have honors. If you ask them about it, they'll tell you, but they're not waving it in
Hmm.
your face. And I think that's something that
And
not everybody does, right?
also, I think that yeah, absolutely 100%. And what's also interesting about them is that that they'll tell you about their honors that they got if you ask them about it. But when you ask them about it, listen carefully because what they're going to tell you about those is how hard they worked to get them.
Hmm.
How much effort they put into the craft, expecting nothing, and they got this nifty honor, and that was really cool. But here's why they gave it to me. I did this thing, blah blah blah, and they would have done it anyway. Um, but that's important because they worked really hard
Right.
uh, for a really long time to get where they are. Um, so yeah, what's interesting is I was thinking about this, and I was thinking that like, and you're right, it has something to do with our competitive nature, right? I've got something you don't have.
Hmm.
I'm more important than
Hmm.
you are, and I think that in society today, in our modern society, I think that Facebook, uh, things like social media, like Facebook, like Twitter, it, uh, Instagram especially, it it caters to that competitive nature. You always hear about people living their Facebook life or their Instagram life, right? And that's not real. What they're doing is that they're putting forward their marketing. They're giving you their brand.
Hmm.
That's not their truth. That's not what they live. Um, and I think a lot of people are starting to understand that. I think that while you can understand it, it's very difficult to realize it in the moment, you know, and you get competitive. You get, oh God, there they go again on vacation again. All I see are pictures of them happy, well, and my life is just this cesspool of stink. And like, no, that's not necessarily fair. That's it's branding, it's marketing, you
Yeah.
know,
Well, there's
and
this.
it's competitiveness,
Yeah. Well,
and
there's
it,
this.
it
It's
makes
a
us
Yeah, it's a psychological
push for
phenomenon, and it's called, I can't remember
right.
the name of it, but it's something like comparative.
Yeah.
It's comparative something, but basically what it means is that you could go out and buy yourself a boat, right? And you're like, I got a boat. I'm, like, look at me, I got a boat. Isn't this cool? And then you
It's
meet a
awesome.
guy who goes, oh
It
yeah,
may or
have
may
you
not
seen
have a
my
key.
boat? My boat, and his boat is twice as big as your boat. And all of a sudden you're just
That's right.
like, I have a
Mhm.
shitty boat. Like,
Mhm.
what was great, a minute ago, suddenly just became complete
That's right.
crap,
Yeah.
in
Right.
comparison to
Yeah.
somebody else. And so that's the problem, is that we compare ourselves,
Right.
to a Facebook feed, which is like completely fictitious, or not
Hmm.
necessarily completely fictitious, but like, you're right. It's curated, right? It's
Yeah.
putting
That's absolutely right.
its best foot forward.
So, so, so keeping all that stuff in mind, I said that another lesson that we get from masonry that we should probably try and take away from this idea of winning and losing is that winning and losing are both important. Um, but in my opinion, I'm just a big fan of losing. I'm a huge fan of losing, you
Yeah.
know, because I wrote down like losing might be more important. And I think it is. I was being coy there. It is. Losing is so much more important to someone. They've had psychological studies where they show that, like if you give somebody a quiz, right, and you get all the right answers on a quiz, like you give people unknown facts. Sorry, I should start this way. Give them unknown facts, and then give them a quiz on those unknown facts. If they score 100%, those unknown facts, they're gone. They're out their head moments later after the quiz.
Mm-hmm.
You give them the unknown facts. If they get something wrong, the thing they get wrong, as long as you correct them and say, oh no, that's absolutely wrong, but let me tell you why it's wrong, sticks. Only the things you corrected stick. What's that tell you, right? It tells you losing is more important, because losing is corrective. It's experiential. What's Masonry? It's experiential.
Mm-hmm.
These are important things to keep thinking about. And so losing is super important. Engineers, any good engineer will tell you, failure is super important to making something that's successful, that will last for a long time, because the lessons you learn from failure are way more important than the lessons you learn from successes.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think that you know, and not just that, but they've done you know, they did a big longitudinal study of children, mm-hmm. right? And they were trying to, this is back in the days when, you know, people were starting to question, like, oh, should we give people trophies for participating? Right.
Yeah, right.
Right. But they did this longitudinal study, which is, for those who don't know, it's where you follow a group of people, you know, for a long period of time to see what the outcomes are. So for example, you might look at people in a longitudinal study who were exposed to radiation as very young children, and then you follow them throughout their life to see, you know, do they get cancer at higher rates when they're in their 50s, right? Mm-hmm. Because you'd never be able to know unless you followed them their entire life, right? So that's what a longitudinal study is. And they found, interestingly, that the biggest predictor of success in children is the ability to persevere. Right? Not income, not education, not, mm-hmm. you know, not intelligence, mm-hmm. not charisma, not good looks. It was the ability to persevere that was the biggest predictor of success in children. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would agree. I think you know, what we call losing is probably more important than winning. I think, you know, the thing about winning though, winning is mastery, right? Winning, and this is something.
Don't get me wrong. The whole goal.
No, winning feels good. Yeah.
Losing. The whole goal of losing is to win in the end.
Yeah. Right.
Is the ultimate win. But the thing is that losing gets you to the win.
Yeah.
And it gets you to a permanent win instead of a temporary win.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. And what's funny is that, like, you know, they say now in business, they say, you know, fail faster.
That's right.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I totally reject that. I totally reject that. Right. Don't fail faster, fail smarter.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Right. Fail, learn from the failure. Right. And when you do something, do it to learn something. Right.
Absolutely.
And if you learn something at the end of it,
with purpose,
you've won, whether or not the outcome is successful.
Sure.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I like that. You know, and what's interesting is that, you know, we talked about the Enlightenment, right? Enlightenment ideas. And we talked about the Dark Enlightenment a little bit. And I think that part of the Dark Enlightenment is the idea, that the societal idea that winning is the only thing. You know, that if you lose, you're a loser.
Right.
You know, winners, it's your, you know, you're number one or you're done.
Yeah.
And Americans especially, we love that, you know, and that's not.
Well, that's because of Calvinism, right?
Absolutely. That's an old American influence.
It goes all the way back to, you know, old Switzerland. But basically what the idea is that if you're a winner, it's because God has bestowed some sort of grace upon you, and you're winning by the grace of God. So God must like you better than like in other words, if you're rich, God likes you better than if you're poor, because, you must have done something as a poor person to deserve being poor, because otherwise, if God really loved you, he'd make you rich.
That's correct. And Calvinism they were some of the early pilgrims that were
Yeah.
Calvinists, because they were being persecuted, because it turns out Calvinists are in that way. And so
We've
they were
just
being
alienated
persecuted.
a whole bunch of Calvinists. You realize that?
Oh, yeah, because all the Calvinists are listening to us. That's a good point. But I think it's funny because Calvinism, that old Calvinism, is back in a big way in this country through. I have the word. I can see the word in my head. I don't know if I'm gonna pronounce it right, so we're just gonna go for it. See what happens when I try and say it. Evangelicalism, evangelicalism. Anybody? No.
Okay. I
Listen.
want to see where you're going with this.
Well, what I'm saying is that there's a whole idea in a lot of evangelical Christianism today that's called I can't think of the exact term for it. It's like seed something.
Prosperity gospel.
Yeah, prosperity gospel, but it comes from a line that talks about how you throw your seed out and God will return it tenfold or something like that. And it's all actually there's a really, really good Last Week Tonight that outlines this whole idea of prosperity gospel and how it's preached all over the United States, and especially in these big mega churches. And it's at its simplest root, it's just Calvinism, but with a little bit more evangelical fervor to it, and a whole lot of sexy American TV pizzazz. And so, it's those attitudes I think are part of the Dark Enlightenment. It teaches us the opposite of losing is good, winning is good. They're both important. It just teaches you losing is bad.
So let me pull you off a ledge here, okay? Because it's really not it's really not about evangelical. Some of my best friends are evangelicals. No, it's not really about evangelical. It's about this idea.
They call themselves evangelicals. They're not. I agree with you.
No. So something I'm a bit of a stickler for is precision of language, and so
absolutely,
yeah. So evangelical is just really about spreading the gospel, spreading the word, right? So
you're 100%. Right.
Yeah. So really, what we're talking about though is we're talking about this idea of predetermination, that you are successful because you've been predetermined to be successful. Now, the Dark Enlightenment version of this, right, is see, here's the thing, like you can always argue with God, and there's like in other words, if you say, well, I'm successful because God made me successful, and if you're not successful, then maybe you don't have a direct line to God like I've got, that's not where it gets really kind of evil. Where it gets evil is when they start talking about it in pseudoscientific terms. So the Dark Enlightenment term for this is biodiversity, right? Mm-hmm. So this is a dog whistle code word, right? So this is where they say, if you're a woman, you're not as good at tech because women are not good in tech because of biology. Right? Because of biodiversity, because, men need to be good at tech and women need to be good at relationships. Right. It's a total crock. And it really is. But it's a very insidious, and social Darwinism, which is another form of this, has been around for a long time. The idea that, if you're successful, then you must be worthy of it somehow, and you must be strong. Well, there's a whole lot of
your success shows that you're better.
Yeah. And there's a lot of, there's a lot to unpack there, right? Because
there is,
there's a whole lot of sort of systemic privilege that, there's a great thing that was going around a couple of years ago. It was going around Facebook and stuff. It was this guy who was trying to teach his students about white privilege. Right. And so what he does is he lines everybody up on a field. Right. And he says, all right, if your parents are still together, take a giant step forward, right? A bunch of people step forward. And if you're white, take a giant step forward. A bunch of people take a step forward. And if your parents are able to pay for your college education, take a giant step forward. Everybody takes a giant step forward. He says, all right, now we're going to have a race to the finish line, right?
Yeah.
Go. Right. And so it's sort of like, okay, yeah. So that was sort of the lesson there. But what it really says to us, just to kind of not to diverge too far off of this, is that this idea of winners and losers, from a Masonic perspective, right? I mean, we have these ideas of winners and losers in society, right? And the problem is that when, it's how we regard winners and how we regard losers. And I think part of the problem in our society is that we tend to be superstitious about it. We tend to think that like, oh, well, if somebody's a winner, I want to hang out with winners. So you tend to gravitate more toward winners. And if someone's a loser, it's like they have cancer. I don't want to be around that because it might rub off on me. Right. And then I'll be a loser too. Right. And so, and so what happens is that, we create classes, right? This is sort of where class comes from, right? If you were friends with the king, right? The king trusts you. He says, all right, I'm going to put you in charge of this castle and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to make you Earl of, whatever. And then 12 generations later, right? It has nothing to do with, defending a castle. It's just sort of like you were born into that privilege. And so people are like, oh, well, I want to hang out with you because you're the Duke of whatever. And right. So I think that, what Masonry innovated in society, right, was a space where everybody could be on the level. Right. And so it instantly sort of took all of the trappings of in society who was a winner and loser and stripped them away so that everybody was starting from a place where they could succeed or fail in Masonry in their pursuit of knowledge based on their effort and their ability. Right. And then we furthermore, we pledged, right, to support each other to help ensure that, that we could all succeed if we persevered. Right. So the idea is that like when you're in a lodge, your brothers are there to help you. They're there to support you. They're there to protect you. We are our brother's keepers. Right. To prevent, so like when they lose, instead of taking joy in that loss, right, we extend our hand, we pick them up, we dust them off. We say, okay, that speech really sucked. Let's do better next time. And there is going to be a next time. Right.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Right.
And that's, and that's my thing, right. Is that I love losers. They learn more. And that's the thing. And especially if they have a community around them. If you have teachers around you, losing, it's safe to lose. As long as you've got teachers, you've got mentors that are able to say, bad, not the choice I thought you'd go for. Next time, let's do better. And here's how we do it next time. Next time is we set it up for you. I totally agree with that, Eric. And we have to guard against that dark enlightenment. I agree. And it is insidious the way that it's corrupted, right? It sounds like the Enlightenment, doesn't it? Biodiversity.
Sure.
It sounds like the Enlightenment, and in fact, it's almost a term that's ripped from Darwin himself, right? To explain biological diversity, but it doesn't mean that.
Well, it doesn't even. I mean, unfortunately, for the Dark Enlightenment, for the followers of the Dark Enlightenment, for the darkly enlightened, I guess it doesn't even like map to Darwin, because what Darwin said was
that's correct.
The ability of someone to prevail is their ability to adapt, right?
Right.
So their ability to to sort of go into a new type of environment and adapt to that environment, right? Which means they're losing until they win, but they don't give up. So that first bird who figured out how to fly back to where he was from so that he could mate and right. And they strove over, right. Yeah. He wins. Right. So right. So it's, and as a species, right, the species propagates by doing that. But this idea of social Darwinism is a complete myth. Right. So I think that what is I think difficult, what is dangerous, I think too about the Dark Enlightenment is that it sort of refutes the idea that all people are created equal and that they're endowed by their creator with inalienable rights. They say, no, that's a fiction, right? It's dog eat dog out there. Lions eat lambs, right?
Yep, well, that's right.
That's true. But as soon as there are no more lambs, lions starve. You know what I mean? Like, so it's sort of like you can't, you have to look at, we have to be, I think, a little bit better as systems thinkers, right? So for example, you go into a lodge, right? And there's, let's say you're lucky enough in your lodge, you've initiated, passed, and raised 4 new guys, right? One of those guys is like, had been a semi-professional actor. So he knows how to memorize stuff, and he's like a ritual ringer, right? Very first thing he did, he starts learning ritual left and right. He is serving on committees. He's committed. He's getting in, he's chomping at the bit to get in the line, stuff like that. And everybody's like, ooh, that guy, And so what happens? Yeah, he's a mover. He's a shaker, right? So what happens? Well, we start paying more attention to that guy. We start giving him more opportunities, right? Maybe he gets invited to an independent body. Maybe he gets, he gets a sweet spot in the Scottish Rite degree, right? Maybe he gets put into the line. Maybe he gets, right? So there's all of these things that happen to people that we deem successful because, we feel like success breeds success.
Sure.
The problem is that typically that's 1 out of 4 guys. You've got 3 guys now who at varying degrees could be successful, right? So I give an example, like one of the finest Masons that I know, a good friend of mine, who I won't name, but he became a Mason pretty much because his dad was a, kind of a muckety muck in Masonry and never really had very much use for it for maybe like 10 years. And then came to it on his own accord and started getting involved in it. And now he's like an amazing Mason, an amazing guy. Right. And if he hadn't had that support network, he might've just said like, what am I doing? Like everybody's telling me that we're all equal, we're on the level, but I don't feel like I'm on the level. I feel ignored. I feel like, right. I feel like nobody gives a shit about me. Right. So
that happens a lot.
Right. So I think that that's the danger, right? Is that, we fail to realize that an army moves as fast as the slowest man.
Absolutely.
Right.
Correct.
And so it's up to us to make sure that those people who are struggling, who are slow moving, that we pay extra attention to them, that we give them opportunities, right? That we turn them into stakeholders, because you know what, the people who are successful, the people who are really good at it, they're going to do it whether we help them or not. They're going to be fine. They're going to be successful. It's the people who need to be encouraged. Like, you need to go to this guy and say, we really need you to write a paper. We think that you have a lot to say about philosophy and Masonry. And we want you to pick one thing that is really interesting to you and tell us why you're interested in it. And that becomes a lodge program. Right. And so if you do that with every guy in your lodge, right, no matter how good or not, and here's the thing, we've had some real stinkers, in terms of presentations in our lodge. We still joke about it all the time. But you know what, kudos to them for getting up and at least making the attempt,
And here's the thing is that, what's interesting about that as well is that the popular notion is that, you might've had a stinker program. Well, you think it's a stinker program, but it might've hit somebody. Just one person, in that audience. And if it hits that one person, well, it's a success to them. You know, I've been in, I've been to some programs in my lodge where I've just thought to myself, wow, ever getting that minute back? It's all over. Literally, I'm going to be on my deathbed going, if it wasn't for that 20 minutes. And I will, what's funny about it is that I'll remember those presentations better than I remember some of the good presentations that I've seen.
Yeah.
Because it was just so awful. It was torturous. But hey, you're right. That guy got up there. He wrote it. He researched it. He understands the topic, and he got up there and gave it. You know, good for him.
And you know what? Sometimes like we can't see it for ourselves. And I'll give you a perfect example. Like this happened to me this week, right? Mm-hmm. So this week I was supposed to go to Jefferson City, Missouri, and give an address to the Grand Cryptic Council there, right? And like 2 days before I was supposed to go, I injured my foot. So I come back from London, I go to work, I step off the curb wrong, and boom, my foot's injured, and I really can't make the drive, right? And it was really it's like smack dab in the middle of the state. It's the only way to get there really is to drive. There's no cost effective way to do it. And I called them up. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I know it's really short notice. I don't think I can make it out there. And they said, oh, well, don't worry about it. We'll set it up over Skype. And I'm like, great. I have all the equipment here. Like I'm Skype Central. Sure. No problem. So we get it set up and I give this talk about millennials, which will be an episode. All right. So I was talking about kind of what millennials find as important and how we need to align Masonry to that. And so I'm giving this talk, and the problem is over Skype, like, it's one thing I thought, like when I'm talking to you, like I can see your face, we got a little body language going, right? I know who I'm talking to, but when you're talking to a room, right? I'm getting zero feedback. In fact, I had to have them mute their mic because when I would talk, it would come in over their PA and I'd get feedback and I couldn't hear myself. So I'm getting like zero feedback from this. And I get to the end of the speech and I'm like, okay, so I'll take questions, right? So there's like 2 questions, right? And I'm just like, okay. And then they like kind of turn the thing around to the room, and from where I was sitting, I couldn't really see, but it didn't look like there were a whole lot of people in the room. And I just thought to myself, and then after the thing, like, I called you up and I'm like, I think I just gave a stinker of a speech. I'm like, I don't think, talk about reading the room. I could not read the room. Literally. I could not read the room. Right. Yeah. But then like after our conversation, like I get a couple of text messages. They're like, oh, you so nailed it. Like the Grand Master was here. It was like provoked a lot of discussion. It was really great. And I'm like, who knew? Right. Who knew?
All right. There you go.
Right.
Rock and roll.
So here I was a complete loser. And within like 15 minutes, I found out that I wasn't a loser after all. Right. I don't know if I was a winner, but I certainly wasn't a loser. So, the moral is sometimes like you can feel like a loser, but you're not, and especially as Masons, right? Because, we can feel like we're nobody or, we don't matter. And the truth of the matter is that, we have a whole fraternity of guys pledged to help and support us. Right. And so like, so people say to me, who's the most important person in the lodge? It's the EA, right? He is the most important person in the lodge because the whole lodge is set up. The reason we exist, right? The whole purpose is to get that guy from darkness to light, right? That is our whole reason for being. And if we, without him, there's no Masonry, right? Yeah. So to me, that's kind of the whole, like, winner and loser thing. And it's not, like, I think that the idea, so one of the things you wrote in your notes is like, should we be giving kids trophies for participating? Right. No, not necessarily trophies, right? We don't need to hold back, honest feedback because it presents a distorted sense of self, right? And that's not good either, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have to be as Masons, we are committed to truth, right? So we have to be, like brotherly love, relief, and truth.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to pay attention to that truth. So, if someone, does something incorrectly or, like they munge up some ritual or they get it wrong, we don't have to shy away from it. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I think we have to be very careful about how we internalize that. Right. So if how that person is going to internalize that. So if it's the kind of thing like, well, all right, we screwed up. Here's where we went wrong. Let's fix it.
Mm-hmm.
We work the problem and we go on. Right. That's the brotherly love part and the relief part. Right. And so here's this guy and he just screwed something up, or like how many guys do we know in our lodges who are just afraid of public speaking? Right.
Yeah.
And I remember when I started doing it, I was terrified of public speaking. Holy crap, but you do it enough and eventually you just don't care. People have to shut you up. Right.
What I was talking about, you got to build up the calluses.
Exactly. Right. So Masonry in its microcosm, right, is so when that truth hits, and that truth can be very unpleasant, right? That's where the brotherly love and the relief come in, right? And that's our obligation. Those are our tenets, right? We need to.
It's so true,
right? And so this has been on my mind a lot this week because of we had two very prominent suicides that took, I think, a lot of people by surprise. So for those who've been under a rock lately, Kate Spade, famous designer, committed suicide this week, and Anthony Bourdain, who I'm a great admirer of. In fact, here's a funny thing. So Anthony Bourdain, they did this Travel Channel thing when he was on the Travel Channel. And I said to the guy who wrote the X-Oriente theme music, make it almost exactly like that Travel Channel theme. And he didn't, what he gave me was great. Right. Like I still like it, but that's I was like, I want to be like that, and so, so I had a lot of admiration for him, and it bewilders me, that it wasn't enough. That somehow, there are people out there, maybe people that we know, maybe people in our lodge, right, that are feeling very isolated. They're feeling depressed. They're feeling like that, of all the people in the world, we as a fraternity, we should never let that happen. We should never
couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more.
And so I think about it because I think, there are lots of people who come into the lodge and maybe who leave the lodge, who drift away because they think that there's no way for them to win. And sometimes they're right. I mean, sometimes the deck is stacked and there are no opportunities for them. And I give an example. Like we have a tradition in our lodge. We believe that we don't have guys who repeat their year as master. That to us is it represents a failure of the lodge, right? So we do everything in our power to never have to have a past master step in and serve another year as worshipful master. And in fact, even if they want to go back into the line because they really enjoyed it, we discourage that. We say, there's other things you can do as a past master.
There are other lodges to join.
Yeah. Other lodges to join. Right. Exactly. So I think part of it is like, how do we respond to our brother, when they fail, right? It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to help. It's a gift. And I think if we can do that and we can recognize that, that we're, being that we're all on the level, that we're able to recognize that in each other so that you can strip all those medals and all those rings and lapel pins and all that stuff, strip it all away. And what are you left with? Right. And it's, we're all siblings, right? We're all brothers. If we can get to that place and at least mentally sort of flatten ourselves as an organization, I think we'll be in much better shape. I think fewer people will fall through the cracks.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I just couldn't agree more. I think that's it's remarkably well said, and I think that it's exactly what we're talking about here: the winners and the losers. It's okay to be both, but if you're a winner, it's way more important for you to be looking behind you at all times.
Yeah,
making sure that people are catching up.
Yeah, that's your responsibility as a winner, right? Is to put it this way: there's no point in being a leader if no one's following, right?
That's absolutely correct.
Right.
Absolutely correct.
Anyone on social media have any comments?
I got Abe Metz just chimed in, said, how do you handle a brother that doesn't want help and is not receptive to instruction?
Well, yeah, that happens a lot.
It does.
Not so much in masonry for me, but more professionally. I think
sure.
I think the first thing to try to suss out is why are they not amenable to instruction? And I think usually when people are like that, it's because they're beating themselves up, and it's so humiliating for them that they're avoiding it. They're just saying, I don't want to even deal with this. So they run from it.
It's all in strategy then. And unfortunately, you can't be straightforward in a situation like that. You're going to have to be a little bit more clever in how you instruct and aid a brother. And that's a bummer because it's much, much more difficult when you can't just do it directly. but there it is. I mean, you're going to need some creativity there.
Yeah. So I think the thing to do is to make sure that they're at ease and make sure that they know unequivocally that you're on their side, right?
Yeah.
And I think
exactly.
once you de-escalate, the stakes, right? If the stakes are so high because they feel like they're going to be humiliated, right? And I mean, I remember like when I was a younger Mason, we don't have this anymore because we've ruthlessly crushed it in our lodge, but people sitting on the sidelines, like, going, oh, when someone makes a mistake or, I mean, we crushed that. Because it's horrible. Like nobody, put it this way, people have an off day or they don't, there are people who are just not good at ritual and they still deserve a shot.
I'll give you another good example, right? Is that this happens to me. I'll post something to our listserv for the Grand Lodge. And if I make a spelling error, if a spelling error makes it in the magazine, I will get like 30 emails almost instantaneously of people going, you spelled this wrong. You did this. And I'm like, so I've literally now started a thing on, you can do canned responses on Gmail. True story. So I have a canned response that I'm starting that starts and says, even the most expensive books that are published today, massive bestsellers, have grammatical errors, spelling errors, spacing errors, formatting errors. They're literally inevitable. And they have armies of people that they employ for these books to root these things out. Armies, literally. So a bestseller will have a multiple proofreaders that go through copy. They have multiple editors that go through some of these books. And even then, if it's just one editor, they're an editor that's an incredible professional editor, right? Errors still happen. It just is human. it happens. Um, and Abe, maybe this helps too, is that approach on how you correct somebody makes a huge difference. Um, it's really interesting, and this actually came up, which is hilarious because this came up with Bourdain on the most American thing in the world is when someone tells you no, you say, "Watch me do it anyway." And so, a little bit of sugar always helps. There's got to be a good way about it, and that can be a very big challenge because sometimes people are annoying.
Well, why do people do that? Why do you think people do that?
What do you mean?
Like, this happens all the time. Like, someone spells a word wrong. It's like, learn to spell, doofus. Like,
oh yeah.
Why,
well,
why does that happen?
It's a power thing. It's a control thing, and it's also it's power, it's control, it is their own insecurities, oftentimes coming to the surface, and it is depending on where and when it happens. It can be attention seeking.
Mm-hmm.
It all depends on the context around it because it's an individual thing, but it's adversity, right? It's just a different kind of adversity. You have to persevere through that stuff. This is exactly what you were talking about at the top of the hour, which is that most children, what they find defines their success is their ability to handle adversity. And it's so funny because it's so true about all of life, is that how you handle your adversity, because you will have adversity, how you handle it defines if you're successful or not.
Yeah, there's a great story in the Talmud about,
Mm-hmm.
There was this guy, Rabbi Hillel, who is, he was a Babylonian, right? And he
Mm-hmm.
became this great rabbi. And
Mm-hmm.
so this guy, he had this reputation of being completely unflappable. No one could get under his skin. And so this rich man bet, a large sum of money that he could get a rise out of him. So he goes up
Right.
to, Hillel, and he says, why do Babylonians have such broad feet? They're like ducks, those Babylonians. And he says, well, it's because Babylon is very marshy, and the Tigris and the Euphrates floods, it's very marshy. And so we need those wide feet to not sink into the mud,
Mm-hmm.
and the guy's like, and he goes off and he thinks a little bit, comes back and he says, why do Babylonians have such flat heads? And he says, oh, it's because we have terrible nursemaids and they drop us all the time as babies, right?
Sure. All right.
And he says,
Right.
and so finally he comes back and this time he's really angry and he says, why are you such a jerk? And Hillel says, why do you say that I'm a jerk? He says, because you just cost me a large sum of money. And he said, well, who's the jerk for like thinking that they could, make that kind of bet and win it? You know what I mean? Like,
right, exactly.
so
That's pretty good. That's nice.
So
Here's a bonus story for you. Just because Abe Metz is your comment went. He's a brother from Florida actually, and so I'll give a bonus Florida story. So when I first started working for the Supreme Council, many years ago, actually it was my first year that I had been hired onto staff. So I'd been an intern for a couple of years already. But this was
can I just tell you,
first...
I've known you long enough that I remember when you were an intern.
Right. That's true. That's so true. God, that's terrible. Anyhow, so this is my first biennial session, right? It's my first year as a full-fledged staff member, fresh-faced, ready to go. And the SGIG at the time in Florida is a difficult man, to say the least. And what happens is that previous to the biennial session, the Grand Commander's Office sends out some material. There's basically a survey and a spreadsheet. And the survey asks questions to the actives and deputies. What's going on? Did you celebrate this? Did you do the Feast of Tishri? Did you do, what activities have you done in your valley for the last 2 years? Have you done this program? Have you done that? That kind of stuff. So there's a few essay questions that they kind of have to go and fill in blanks on. And then there's a spreadsheet where they give all their financial information, all their budget stuff, their budget, and then their actual numbers for the last 2 years. And it's basically just a report for their state. They all have to send that in. That's a statutory thing. When they all come in, the Grand Commander has a big pile of these reports, and he gives them to me and says, go make sense of this. Analyze. Okay. So I put it in a giant spreadsheet, and I start to kind of try and boil things down, and give him trends, give him numbers, how many valleys are doing these things as opposed to how many states are doing them, all this stuff.
I think I know where this is going. Yeah.
Work really hard on it. Yeah. And the SGIG in Florida, the first thing he said to me was, you're Jason. Did you do this report? And I said, I did, sir. And he went, well, it's garbage. And he literally chucked it in the garbage can right in front of me. And I was like, wow, that is an A1 asshole move. And so I kept my mouth shut, which
I know
we all know
for you, it's a difficult thing. Yeah.
I should say I kept my mouth shut for a while because I thought, there's no reason to tell him what I really think. So let's be the Washington man you are. And so it was not Dale, actually. Dale was a ridiculously nice guy and was always really cool to me. It was the guy before. Anyhow, so this guy's hat case, he had an alligator skin hat case. And so I saw him a little while later putting his hat in said alligator skin hat case. And I went, whew, SGIG guy from Florida. That is a fancy hat case you got there. Kill that alligator yourself? Bare hands? And he gave me this look like, I can't believe you said that to me. And it just so happens the Grand Commander was standing right behind me. Slapped me on the shoulder and went, now that's a good one, Jason. Did you kill it yourself? I'm like, oh, whoops. But the best part was I knew I got him because he couldn't say anything back to me this time because I had got him in the exact same situation that I was in. And I was like, I feel better about myself. Just by luck. But that's my bonus story. And it shows you a little perseverance. You shut your mouth, you'll have your opportunity.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Jason Corleone. So no, but here's my question. Was the report garbage?
It was not. No, actually, it was garbage in his eyes. By the way, it was garbage because it said that the state of Florida wasn't doing a lot of things that the Supreme Council wanted them to be doing.
Okay.
And so when it came to the reporting time stuff, there were a lot of blanks.
Oh, see, I thought this was going in a totally different direction.
No, he was not pleased. Yeah, he was not pleased with the fact that that in the session, the actual Supreme Council session, the closed session, the executive session, is not pleased that the results were read out loud. He was not expecting that. It's like when the kid gets a report card and goes, "What do you mean I haven't shown up for school and all I get is Fs?" Like, how dare you?
How dare you say that? Yeah.
Do you know who I am?
So here's where I thought that was going. So
that it was garbage and I persevered.
Well, that it was. So this is something that as a strategist, like I see this a lot, especially in young strategists, is when you ask them to do an analysis of something, right? And what they give you is a summary. right? So they compile all the data, right? And they give you all the facts and figures, but they don't tell you what it means, right? There's no analysis there. There's just here's what these guys did, here's what those guys did, right? And I'm like, okay, so what, so what? And they just look at you
What does
like,
it mean?
what do you mean? What does it mean? What does it mean? All right, go back, figure out what it means, come back, So it's but it's very, a lot of times it's very hard for those young analysts to sort of.
What's interesting about the story is that actually we joined the story at its conclusion. And midway through that story is the first time I gave the report to the Grand Commander. He said, I mean, you kind of did what I told you to do, which is to put it all in a spreadsheet. But you've given me, I gave him some analysis, but I did not give him the analysis he was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that was because he didn't tell me. He just literally just gave it all and said, here, go give me something with this. And I tried. But, I wasn't answering the questions he wanted answered. And so the second time through, I made sure to say, oh, okay, so what are you looking for? Because this is how I've put the data together. Exactly how I need you to put the data together. And I had to go back and redo the whole thing. And it was a pain in the butt. And it took a really long time to do it the way that he wanted it done and the way that he deserved to have it done, which was much more thorough. And so it was actually a pretty good report, actually, I have to say, when it was all done.
So the lesson, there's a very important Masonic lesson here, and also like in kind of my experience with young analysts, and that is that one of the things that I make real clear to the people that when I mentor them is that, I'm committed to your success, right? And what that means is that I may tell you something is complete crap, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you that because you need to hear it, but it doesn't mean that you're complete crap. And it doesn't mean that you're not capable of doing it a better way. Right. And you know what, if it takes all night to figure out how to do that, I will be here all night with you, because I'm not going to let you fail. I'm not going to write you off. I'm not going to walk away. I'm here to, in the thick of it with you to make sure that, and all I ask of you is just don't give up. Right. Don't give up, and I won't give up. And together we might be exhausted. We might want to kill each other by the end of it, but it'll be good. And you will have succeeded, and then you'll feel good about it because you won't have to do this again. You won't have to go through this again.
That's exactly right.
And I think that as Masons, we need to sort of have a spirit of that we're not going to, like, if you commit to the lodge, if you commit to Freemasonry, we will be here for you. And that might be difficult at times. That might be uncomfortable at times. At times it might, nothing's worse than you make a mistake and you're out, you're done. It's the worst, because you can have that, the French call it esprit d'escalier, right? The spirit of the staircase, where you just go, oh, I should have done it this way. Right. But now it's too late. You've blown your chance. You'll never get another one. We're not like that. We don't do that. We shouldn't do that.
No.
Right.
There's always another chance. Always another chance. I mean, life really is like the NFL.
Yeah.
If you've got the talent, there's always another chance.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So that's winners and losers. So really, like, in a perfect world, there should be we should all be winners. We shouldn't, losers are the precursor to winners. We should have called it losers and winners. Right. But there you go.
There you go.
We'll do better next time.
That's just too easy. Too easy.
So, hey, at this point, I want to thank our executive producers for making the show happen. Hey, guess what? We have an app. Did you know that we have an app?
I do have it. You know what, Eric? Here on my telephone, I nice up and close to the camera. Look at that
Look at
right
that.
there. That's an app right there.
Wait, you have 2 unlistened episodes? Jason.
Probably
Shame on
means
you.
something
I'm,
else.
I'm
It
just
probably
kidding.
means something else.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
What
Anyway,
does it
yeah.
mean?
So
Oh, no,
we've
it is two unlistened episodes.
so
I'm a
here.
terrible person.
So here's the deal. We have our app. It was a long time in making it. It finally got approved by Apple while I was in London, and uh, um, and you can go download it if you have an iOS device. We
Mm-hmm.
are working on a Android version that'll come out probably later this summer. So don't worry. We're not going all Apple centric on you. It's just that it's a little harder to develop the iOS version first. So we wanted to get that out of the way. And so once we figured out that we can actually do the iOS version, the Android version shouldn't be as difficult. So go download it. Go to the iTunes App Store and download the app, and you will never be without an episode of X-Oriente. Also, I wanted to welcome a couple of new people to the ranks of the executive producers. Scott Sherman out of Palmer, Massachusetts. Welcome. Thank you for your support. David Connolly from, I think he's in Australia. I got to contact him because I have your welcome kit right here. I just need to make it's AU, which is I think that's Australia, right? It's not Austria. I think Austria is like AT. But anyway, welcome David Connolly, Charles Ward from Juneau, Alaska. Your packet is going out tomorrow. Tyler Anderson from Albuquerque. Guys, welcome and thank you so much for supporting the show. It's because of your support that we're able to do things like have video and spinning X-Oriente logos and apps and things like that. And we're able to bring you the kind of content that we're bringing you. So thank you so much.
I do want to say it is Australia. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you.
Looked it up. You're welcome.
That's great.
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power. So, so if you want to become an executive producer, just visit our Patreon page. As well, you should. We should all be X-Oriente executive producers. Go to our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/X-Oriente. And you make a pledge, and we'll send you out a lovely thank you kit. And actually, we're including stickers too now with the kits, so you'll get a little bit more for your money. And for those who already are executive producers and you haven't gotten stickers, we'll be doing a mailing, and we'll include some so everybody gets. The other thing that I wanted to mention. If you we want to know what you think, and we want to know what you want to hear more of, less of, want to know what you think of the show, drop us a line at xoriente.com. Visit us at, drop us a line at xoriente@gmail.com. Visit us at xoriente.com or on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/xoriente, and let us know what you think. We'll do our best to get back to you as quickly as we can. Hey, but I wanted to mention this. So I stayed at this hotel in London, near the Liverpool Street Station. It's the Hyatt Andaz. So Andaz is like this sort of trendy kind of boutique hotel. And we stayed there because we were kind of close to the office where we were going to be having meetings. And I found out that there were two really interesting things about the hotel. One I found out, and one I didn't find out until I got back. The thing that I found out was that that hotel was the site of the original Bedlam.
Right. So, yeah. Which is great.
Right.
That's awesome.
So Bedlam, the word Bedlam comes from the name of the hospital by the same name, which is a sort of
insane asylum.
It was an insane asylum. The Bethlehem Hospital, which sort of got shortened to Bedlam. And so it was weird because I was walking through the hallways and I'm like, this building looks like it was something before it was a hotel, because there were these like reinforced doorways and like I was just like, this might have been a hospital or a military headquarters or something.
Yeah.
But the other thing, which I totally missed, and now I'm going to have to go back and go see this, is that on the other side of the building, I did not go there. so they were doing these excavations when they were making improvements and they were installing the Hondas, and they broke through this wall, and behind the wall was a complete Masonic lodge that had been untouched. Yeah, untouched since like the 1920s.
Oh, that's super cool.
And it's totally intact.
That's awesome.
It's totally intact.
Bedlam Lodge?
What's that?
Because I want in on Bedlam Lodge.
I don't think it was Bedlam Lodge because
doesn't matter. It is now.
So
that's awesome.
So they eventually, the area in London kind of went a little upscale, and they decided, we shouldn't have all these insane people here. So what they did was they moved it to south. They moved the hospital to south of the river, and then that became a hotel called the Great Northern Hotel. And as part of that, there was a Masonic building on the other side of the block. And what they did was they just, when they were doing renovations, they just stuck a wall up and walled it off.
That's incredible.
And so this, this lodge is totally intact.
Yeah, they shipped. I think they shipped them all to. They shipped them all to Strangeways, I think, which is just outside of London, I think. And Strangeways actually, and here you go. And who designed Strangeways?
The Masons.
Sir Christopher Wren, actually.
Oh.
And so and actually it was one of his one of the achievements he was most proud of. Because St. Paul's wasn't a big deal to him, but it turns out that he was really proud of Strangeways because it was both a asylum, a home for the insane, and it was a
vacation resort for the insane.
No, and a prison. And so, it had all of these different functions, and he was super proud of the fact that it had multiple functions. Which is strange, but anyhow, but Christopher Wren is sometimes mentioned as a possible Mason, early Mason.
That's cool. So I'm going to try. I'm going back in October. I might go back before, but definitely going back in beginning of October. The room is not open to the public. Like, you have to make an appointment to see it. But I'm going to try
make an appointment
to get some cameras in there and bring it to you on X-Oriente. Cool. Yeah, wouldn't it be cool?
Yeah, that's awesome. That'd be super fun. That is super cool. Bedlam Lodge. I love it.
Wouldn't that be great?
So wonderful. Right. That is so great.
So anyway, thank you all for joining us on X-Oriente. We'll be back next week with another episode, and that's it for me. Fiat Vox, everybody.
Fiat Vox, everyone. Good night.